You walk into the dealership, bright lights, gleaming chrome, and right there on the floor, a Honda you've never seen before and probably never will again. Why? Because some bikes are born to fail. Honda doesn't talk about them, dealers can't get rid of them, and yet they're still hiding in plain sight, waiting for the next poor rider to fall for the wrong machine. These are the 7 motorcycles Honda wishes you'd forget. And if you're even thinking about buying a new bike, you need to see this first. 1. Honda Fury, the chopper that forgot to be wild. You walk into the dealership. Under the fluorescent lights, it's the one bike that demands your attention, long, low, and dripping in chrome. The Honda Fury. It looks like it just rolled off the page of a custom chopper magazine. Its stretched out front fork, its slammed silhouette, and that glittering paint job all scream attitude. For a moment, you imagine the open highway, the sun setting in your mirrors, and people turning their heads as you roll by. This is the factory-built chopper that was supposed to make rebellion accessible. Honda had a bold idea. Build a bike that looked every bit as wild and custom as the hand-built machines you'd find at a motorcycle rally, but make it reliable, clean, and ready to ride out of the box. No greasy hands, no sketchy welds, no hours lost in a garage, just hit the starter and go. Underneath the Fury's radical styling is a 1,312 cubic centimeter V-twin engine. It puts out a solid amount of torque, plenty for laid-back cruising, and instead of a chain, it uses a shaft drive, which means less maintenance and less mess. On paper, it's the best of both worlds, all the chopper style, with none of the hassle. But that's where it all started to fall apart. Because real chopper fans, they don't care about easy. They want brutal. They want bikes that shake, growl, and make no apologies. They want to feel like they built it themselves, not like they bought it off a showroom floor next to a Civic. To that crowd, the Fury wasn't rebellious. It was corporate cosplay. Too smooth, too quiet, too clean. It had the look, but none of the soul. And then there were the practical cruiser riders. People who wanted something for long weekends and laid-back rides. For them, the Fury's aggressive design was a turn-off. That stretched-out front end made it clumsy in parking lots. The low-slung seat might look cool, but it was a recipe for lower back pain. And those high handlebars, not exactly great for comfort. It was the kind of bike that made sense in a 5-minute fantasy, but not for real-world use. The result? The Fury got stuck between two worlds. Too tame for the outlaws, too wild for the weekenders. It didn't fully satisfy anyone. Dealerships that stocked up on them were convinced they had the next big hit. But as the months rolled by, these bikes sat untouched. Riders would admire them, maybe even sit on one, but they rarely signed the paperwork. Most ended up buying either a Harley-Davidson that felt more authentic or a cruiser that was simply more comfortable. The Fury wasn't a bad motorcycle. In fact, by Honda standards, it was well-engineered and solid. But that was exactly the problem. In trying to build the most dependable chopper on the road, they stripped out everything that made choppers cool in the first place. There was no danger, no attitude, no rawness. What Honda built was a chopper-shaped motorcycle that couldn't decide who it was for. A rebellion in a box with a user manual. It was a swing at something bold, but ultimately it missed the mark. And if the Fury's biggest problem was a confusing personality, the next bike on this list had almost no personality at all. 2. The two-wheeled minivan, Honda NC 750X. Imagine a bike that does everything right. Affordable, efficient, low maintenance, and even comes with storage. That's the Honda NC 750X. It was built to be the perfect commuter, a two-wheeled solution for real-world riders. No drama, no surprises, just clean, reliable transportation. And that's exactly why it failed. The NCX is powered by a 745 cubic centimeter parallel twin. It's tuned for low-end torque and amazing fuel economy. It sips fuel like a scooter and runs forever. Honda even gave it a dual-clutch transmission, the DCT. That means no clutch, no gear lever. You twist the throttle and it goes. Simple. Too simple. Because motorcycles aren't just transportation. People don't dream of riding an appliance. They want connection. They want feedback. They want something that makes their heart race, not just something that gets them to work. And the NCX? It's quiet. It's smooth. It's sterile. The DCT removes all the engagement. You just sit there while the bike does the work. It's efficient, yes, but exciting? Not even close. Even the design screams utility. The most talked about feature isn't the engine or the handling, it's a storage box. Where the fuel tank should be, Honda put a trunk big enough for a full-face helmet. Smart? Absolutely. Memorable? Not at all. But the real problem is identity. What is the NCX? It's not an adventure bike. It can't handle trails. It's not a sport bike. It lacks the power and aggression. It's not a proper top touring machine. Too small and basic. It sits in the middle of every category and never truly fits anywhere. Dealers thought it would be a hit. Reliable, cheap to run, easy to ride, but they forgot that even commuters want a bike that makes them smile. The NCX makes sense on paper, but in the real world, it's the motorcycle equivalent of a beige minivan. And riders noticed. It didn't matter how practical it was. Most buyers took one test ride and left without a second thought. And the ones who bought it? Many traded it in within a year, looking for something with a pulse. Because when your motorcycle feels like it's trying not to disturb you, that's a problem. Honda's goal was noble, but in removing every pain point, they accidentally removed every reason to care. Go ahead, like the video, or don't, and accidentally buy one of these bikes. Your call. But hey, subscribing might actually save you thousands. 3. The special edition that missed the point. Honda Grom SP. When the original Honda Grom dropped, it was a revelation. Small, cheap, fun, and customizable to the moon. Riders fell in love. It wasn't just a bike, it was a platform. You didn't buy a Grom to leave it stock. You bought one to build your own. Then came the SP. The Special Performance Edition promised a more premium experience, but it had no performance upgrades. None. The same 124 cubic centimeter engine, same power, same chassis, same everything, except for bronze wheels, a different seat, and a few cosmetic tweaks. And a higher price. That's where Honda lost the plot, because the Grom isn't about polish, it's about potential. The whole reason people love it is because it starts off cheap and simple. That way, you can make it your own. You're not supposed to pay extra for factory upgrades, you're just going to swap out anyway. Worse, the SP branding created expectations. Special Performance sounds like something with more speed, more bite, not a slightly shinier paint job. The core Grom audience saw right through it. Young riders, custom builders, and first-time buyers didn't want it. The price was too high, and the changes weren't meaningful. The regular Groms kept selling. The SPs, they sat, unsold, unwanted. Honda built a version of the Grom for people who never existed. A factory-fresh minibike with luxury aspirations in a segment defined by do-it-yourself fun. It was a tone-deaf move that misunderstood the culture entirely. The SP wasn't special. It was a lesson in branding gone wrong. 4. Honda DN01. The sci-fi dream that became a showroom nightmare. It looked like a prop from a movie set, a motorcycle straight out of a science fiction blockbuster. The Honda DN01 was supposed to reinvent city commuting, and it did, just not in the way Honda hoped. The DN was powered by a 680 cubic centimeter V-twin paired with an automatic transmission. No clutch, no gears to shift. It was wrapped in a long, low, sweeping fairing that gave it a look unlike anything else on the road. It wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a statement. And that's where the trouble started, because nobody knew what that statement was. Was it a cruiser, a scooter, a sport bike? The DN didn't fit anywhere. It was too big and heavy to be a scooter, too smooth and quiet to be a cruiser, too soft and awkward to be a sport bike. It was a machine without a category and without a rider. Traditional bikers didn't want it. They looked at the automatic transmission and saw a toy. Younger riders were curious, until they actually rode it. The seating was weird, the steering was slow, and the riding experience? Disconnected. It felt more like gliding than riding. Some called it comfortable, most called it boring. The DN's futuristic design was supposed to make it stand out. Instead, it made it unapproachable. Riders didn't feel drawn to it, they felt confused by it. And confusion doesn't sell motorcycles. But the real nail in the coffin? Price. The DN cost more than many of Honda's best traditional bikes. For the same money, you could get a true sport bike, a full-size tourer, or a classic cruiser with heritage and community support. The DN offered none of that, just an odd experience at a premium price. Dealers couldn't move them. Sales were dead on arrival. Honda pulled the plug, and the remaining stock gathered dust for years. Some still sit in corners of showrooms, covered in plastic and silence. The DN was a bold swing, but instead of redefining urban motorcycling, it became a case study in what happens when design outpaces demand. A motorcycle from the future that nobody wanted to ride today. 5. Honda CB1000RR, a powerful naked bike with no personality. On paper, this was supposed to be Honda's answer to the modern super naked street fighter. A motorcycle with all the power of a superbike, but stripped of the fairings and packed with everyday rideability. The Honda CB1000R looked sharp, hit hard with the numbers, and even came with a design philosophy Honda called Neo Sports Cafe. But the name sounded more like a coffee shop than a killer street machine. And the bike? Well, it was more quiet dinner party than barroom brawl. The CB had the numbers, a 998 cubic centimeter inline-4 engine, over 140 horsepower, a compact, upright chassis. It should have been raw and aggressive, a true rival to the Yamaha MT-10 or Kawasaki Z900. But while those bikes bark and snarl, the CB just purred. Honda aimed for refinement. What they delivered was a machine that was almost too smooth. The power delivery was linear. The exhaust note was muted. The suspension was composed. It had no bad manners, and that was exactly the problem. Super naked riders want personality. They want a bike that pushes back, that roars when you twist the throttle. The CB was fast, but it never felt wild. It was beautifully made, but it didn't make you feel anything. And then there was the styling. Honda leaned hard into their Neo Sports Cafe look, a strange blend of modern aggression with touches of retro charm. But it landed somewhere in the middle. Not fully futuristic, not fully classic, just confused. It didn't help that the competition was dropping bold designs with angular lines, wild lighting, and loud finishes. CB looked tame by comparison. Buyers noticed. Many who test-rode it agreed. It was competent, but they didn't come back excited. And when it came time to choose, they went for the bike that made their blood pump, not the one that made sense. And then came the price tag. The CB was more expensive than some of its competitors. And in a segment defined by adrenaline and emotion, riders weren't willing to pay extra for calm and collected. They wanted attitude, not a polite nod from the Honda engineers. Dealerships struggled to explain it. Was it a commuter? A sport bike alternative? A modern classic? It didn't quite fit into any one box. And for riders, that meant it didn't fit into their garage either. The CB wasn't bad. It was just too safe, too restrained. In a world full of loud, bold motorcycles, it whispered when it should have screamed. 6. The Rebel that wasn't a rebel. Honda Rebel 1100 DCT. For decades, word Rebel in Honda's lineup meant one thing: approachable cruisers for beginners. The bikes were light, friendly, and easy to ride. Then Honda tried something bold. They took the name, scaled it up, and gave the world the Rebel 1100, a full-sized cruiser with serious power, sleek, blacked-out styling, and, controversially, a DCT automatic transmission. And that's where things got weird. The Rebel looked the part: a muscular stance, a 1,084 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, minimalist styling, and for riders who wanted to stand out, it offered something no other big cruiser had: shiftless riding. On paper, it was clever. American V-twins were getting heavy, expensive, and outdated. Honda's pitch? A new kind of cruiser. Lighter, more reliable, easier to live with. But the problem was the very thing that made the bike unique. The DCT was also the reason many riders couldn't connect with it. Cruiser fans love tradition. The deep rumble, the clunk of the gear shift, the rhythm of rolling through the gears with your hand and foot. Honda took all of that and replaced it with computer-controlled smoothness. No clutch lever, no gear pedal, just twist and go. And that made the Rebel feel more like a scooter in a leather jacket. The engine didn't help either. It revved quickly, more like a sport bike than a cruiser. There was no low-end thunder, no growl, no drama. And without those visceral touches, the Rebel came off like a cruiser that didn't want to be one. And then there was the price. The Rebel was dangerously close in cost to entry-level Harley-Davidson and Indian models. And while Honda's version was smoother and more modern, many buyers figured if they were spending that kind of money, why not go with the brand that defined the category? It wasn't just a product problem, it was a soul problem. The Rebel tried to bridge the gap between tradition and technology, but in doing so, it didn't fully satisfy either camp. Cruiser riders thought it felt too sterile. Performance riders thought it looked too tame. It was stuck between two worlds, trying to appeal to both and failing to win over either. Dealers quickly found themselves stuck with inventory. The standard Rebel 500 kept selling. The big one, not so much. And the version with DCT, even harder. The Rebel 1100 had all the ingredients of a winner. But instead of creating a new kind of cruiser, it proved there's a fine line between innovation and alienation. 7. The bridge to nowhere. Honda CTX 700. Sometimes a motorcycle is built for a noble purpose, but loses its way. That's the story of the Honda CTX 700. A bike designed not to excite, but to comfort, not to thrill, but to ease new riders into the world of motorcycling. CTX stood for comfort, technology, and experience. Honda's goal was clear: build the most approachable full-size motorcycle possible, something that would feel as easy as driving a car. And in that mission, they succeeded, maybe too well. The CTX was powered by a 700 cubic centimeter parallel twin, and the same one used in other entry-level Hondas, paired with a DCT automatic transmission. No shifting, no intimidation, just twist and go. The seating was low, the bars were relaxed, the power delivery was smooth. It was designed for nervous beginners, returning riders, or anyone who wanted motorcycling without the fear. But it also came without the fun. Riders who tested the CTX described it as dull. The throttle was sluggish. The exhaust was whisper quiet. The styling was soft and forgettable, bulbous and plastic heavy, like a melted cruiser or a stretched scooter. Worse, it cost more than other better beginner bikes. Even within Honda's own lineup, riders were choosing the Rebel 500 instead. That bike had edge, it had character, and it was cheaper. The CTX was trying to solve a problem that didn't really exist. Riders who wanted more excitement avoided it. Riders who wanted simplicity often chose scooters instead, and everyone else just overlooked it. Dealerships stocked up expecting it to be a beginner-friendly hit, but instead it became one of the hardest bikes to move. It didn't scare anyone, but it didn't inspire them either. The CTX wasn't a bad bike, it was a safe one, too safe. And when it came time to choose, new riders didn't want training wheels, they wanted a motorcycle that made them feel something. Honda built the CTX to be a bridge, but for most riders, it led straight to a dead end. From futuristic flops to rebels with no cores, these bikes prove one thing: even Honda can miss the mark. Engineering, solid. Execution, maybe. But motorcycles aren't just machines. They're emotion, attitude, and identity. So before you buy your next ride, ask yourself, does it spec sheet well, or does it feel right? Drop a comment below. Which of these bikes surprised you the most? Or did we miss one you think belongs on this list? Hit like, smash subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one, where we dig into the most overrated motorcycles ever built.